This is PNC Roundtable.
Hello, this is Rick DeVore, Regional President for PNC Bank, and thank you for listening to PNC Roundtable. It's on this show that we tackle some of the region's tough issues with people who make a difference.
Now here's the PNC Roundtable.
Welcome into the PNC Roundtable, special edition, Mackinac Island, the Detroit Greater Regional Chamber Policy Conference here on the island. I'm Paul W. Smith, along with my co-host Rick DeVore of PNC Financial Services Group, the president of our PNC Bank. And always a pleasure to be with Rick. And you have a very specific theme that's tied in with what's happening here on the island.
We do, and Paul, we like the fact that we are timely, and I think this can't be a more timely topic, what's going on in Lansing with the MEDC. So I talked to my good friend Doug Rothwell last week, and we thought John would be the perfect guest, along with Doug, to talk about this topic. So I'm really excited about this show. It's timely, and it's the right thing to do.
Well, the John you talk about is John Russell, President and CEO of CMS Energy Corporation. John, nice to see you, sir.
Good to see you, too.
And Doug Rothwell, of course, who you mentioned, the President and CEO of Business Leaders for Michigan. Douglas?
Good to see you, too, Paul.
Always a pleasure.
You bet.
What's going on up here? There's been a rumbling and questioning and talking and even arguing about taking a hit at MEDC. And it's easy to say, wait a minute, don't cut pure Michigan because it gives us such a great return. But there's a lot about MEDC that a lot of us think are pretty good and pretty important to the great state of Michigan. I'll start with you, Doug. What are your thoughts?
Well, what the House has proposed is basically a 50% cut to our economic development spending in the state. And our concern is, just as we are getting our feet back under us again, the last thing we want to do is to cut our retention and attraction efforts to get more jobs. And the other thing is that, we've been so inconsistent about our approach to doing this over the years. One of the knocks against Michigan is that we change our economic development strategy, every 3, 4, 5 years. And this is another symbol of that. Take Pure Michigan, Paul, as an example. I mean, it's not just the money that goes to support the promotional campaign, but it's also the money that supports the infrastructure that's needed to support those tourism businesses. In Frankenmuth, for example, the MEDC has put millions of dollars into sewer lines and road improvements to make sure that town can be the tourist attraction that it is. And I think we need to look at this as being a very holistic problem for our ability to be competitive going forward.
Well, Doug, as chair of the MEDC Executive Committee, you can speak to all of these issues very specifically: business development programs, community revitalization program, and for you, John Russell, the Pure Michigan Business Connect program.
Oh, yeah, it's been a great program for us, and probably more importantly for the citizens of Michigan. This is a program that began about 5 years ago. And what the governor did is challenge us to look at the big companies in Michigan and buy more product and services from companies in Michigan. So we made a commitment 4 years ago to spend $1 billion more over a 5-year period. And we just completed that in a 4-year period. And I'll give you a good example. We're doing a lot of air emission controls at our power plants. So what we do is we went out for procurement, and we're looking at Michigan-sourced companies that are competitive and can provide very good quality service and product. So what we do is we buy the steel from Alrose Steel in Jackson. We move it up through Michigan Trucking to a northern location for Moran Iron Works, who fabricates it, bring it down with Michigan Trucking back to the power plants on the west side of the Michigan. So what we have is we've created through this process, not only spent $1 billion, created 5,000 jobs in Michigan right here.
And my friends, this is also pure Michigan.
Yes, absolutely.
Start to stop.
I think a lot of people don't realize that. I mean, the advertising campaign is, Emmy award winning.
It's big, it's important, but it isn't everything.
But this is also a big part of it. In fact, you could actually make a compelling case, a bigger part of it, when you look at the job creation.
Talk about the capital markets program, which partners with the private sector and increases the availability to capital to companies operating in Michigan. Rick, a little bit about the PNC's entrepreneurial capital program and the partnership with MEDC.
Well, we're in a number of MEDC-sponsored funds. MEDC comes in, and they come in at the B level, Paul, and it really enhances our yield in these funds. So we're in Grow Michigan Fund, we're in Invest Michigan Fund, we're also in our Terraces Fund. And all these funds basically are aimed at businesses to grow here in Michigan. So this would not be early stage money, but rather it'd be like a second round of financing. And it's really very important for these companies to continue to grow. So they have, the good news is they have the sales, but they might not have the capital to get to that next level. These MEDC sponsored funds provide that capital.
I sense that there might be some out there that say, well, wait a minute, why do we need an economic development program in the first place? Why do we need to go out there and offer money to people? Can't we let the free market system just work? And I know you guys have heard that, and you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I do. I think
John.
we are, well, first of all, I think we are letting the free market work. Like any business that wants to attract customers, you need to provide something to get their attention, whether it's an incentive or a discount or creating your visibility until they start buying from you. And once they start buying from you, hopefully you'll see the value of that product. And every state, and Doug can talk about this best, and many of the communities and countries that we compete against have that. So we need to be competitive. That's an important piece of this. And incentives are a way to get businesses to look at Michigan. No different than an initial discount when you're buying a product.
And by the way, as you can tell us, Doug Rothwell, we're competing with states. We're competing with other places that come up with all kinds of incentives.
Well, look, as much as we celebrate the comeback of Michigan, the fact is that we have really not been considered for any of the most significant site selection or location decisions in America for the last decade. If you look at all...
Wait a minute, say that again?
If you look, Site Selection Magazine categorizes the biggest deals each year.
And they're passing over Michigan?
Michigan's not on the list. Okay, number one. Number two is you look at all the foreign auto plants that have been invested in this continent. They're not going into Michigan. New corporate headquarters by the foreign automakers are going to the south. Volvo is a great example that John just was referencing. They went to South Carolina, a state that has a great business climate, low regulation, all the things that we take pride in our new business climate, and they offered $200 million worth of incentives, which, by the way, is twice what we have to offer in a year.
Overall
in Michigan.
And that's one deal.
That's one deal.
That's our entire budget that we're talking about cutting in maybe in half.
That
so if you
doesn't
think
make,
about the enormity of that, that's a great example.
It makes absolutely no sense.
And I think, Paul, you hit on something at the very beginning that I'd like to hear Doug and John's thoughts on, and that is that it's this reputation risk we have of this inconsistent approach to attract investments. It's like last year I dealt with this person, this year it's this person, and that reputation risk, I think, is kind of what you're getting at. I think it's that inconsistent approach.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, what you don't want, I guess there's a couple key elements to this. One, the state has to be competitive. That's first of all. Secondly, it needs to be consistent. As the consistency occurs, so will people know what Michigan you get in Michigan. For those of us that live here, we love Michigan, but there's people outside that have a different image about Michigan. And then what you've heard here on the island over the past couple of days is the cohesiveness. You really need that consistency and the commitment that we want to grow Michigan. We want to create jobs. We want high-paying jobs. We want good schools. We want Michigan to do better. That's something you have to go out and sell. And it doesn't, when people come to you, I use the adage with economic development, as a company's locating, you tend to date the state, but you marry the community, because that's where you end up. It's great.
I hadn't heard it put that way before, John. Yeah, but
write that one down.
There's a pearl. Yeah. Well, you really want to do that.
a pearl.
But these are things I think you really want to think about, and the state needs to be consistent. And Doug, you made a good point. We've seen this flip-flop, if you will, for the past 15 or 20 years. And, we've had governors that have been supportive, governors that haven't, governors that have been both. And so I think it's important for us to show an image, because people don't locate plants all the time. They locate them every few years or every couple decades, and they want to remember it was a good process or not.
Well, and here's the other thing we never talk about, as we should and we need to, welcoming new people, enticing new people to come. P.S. There's no guarantee that the people who are here are going to stay. Exactly. We have to work on that, too. Exactly. We cannot take this stuff for granted anymore.
Exactly.
Well, look, we are a state that's not been growing. For the decade of the 2000s, we were the only state to lose population. We're not anymore. We're starting to gain back. But, Paul W., you're exactly right. I mean, we want to provide great job opportunities for our people. And a way to do that is to bring in new investment that can provide greater career breadth of choices that they have. And if we just look, our primary focus is still on growing our existing companies in Michigan. So let's make no mistake about that. But attracting business still has to be part of the solution.
It does indeed. And you've pointed out before, Doug, here and other conversations we've had, that these other places, these other states have huge budgets, some is 7 times more in their incentive basket, if you will, to hand out. And we're one of only 3 states that have a corporate income tax. Yet, we offer no tax credits for job creation or investment. That doesn't seem to make sense, and also is one of the reasons why, when you take a look at the states that are welcoming to businesses and businesses are looking at, we're not on those lists now. And frankly, I thought we were. I thought that had been turned around and we had become a much more business-friendly state, but now I'm told that that's not true.
Well, we have. We are a more business-friendly state. I mean, we are back in the game. There's no question about it. We are getting consideration that we didn't get 5-10 years ago. But as John pointed out, it's still expected as part of a deal that you're going to offer some incentive to locate there. And our concern is that the dramatic cut that this would make to the MEDC's budget would put us at a distinct disadvantage.
So it's the consistency, Paul. I think the issue is the consistency. That, when you think about siting a plant, a few miles difference could make a world of difference in how competitive that plant is in that location. So at a border of the state, they could simply go to one part of the northern part of the state or the southern part of another state. So business climate, the consistency in application, the welcomeness and the commitment from the state is what's really important. And we've, like you said, this word is already out about reducing incentives and so forth, and people that are looking at Michigan may be crossing that list off right now.
So really, this is sad, but just the talking of Michigan considering cutting incentives is truly sending a warning message to businesses that they can't count on us. So this is really bad.
We know right now, Paul W., that site consultants, the people that advise companies where to locate their investments, are using this against us. They are talking to their business clients and they're saying, do you really think Michigan ought to be on your list? Because look at what they're doing. Can they be a reliable business partner for you, as John said, where you're making an investment that's going to be 10, 20, 30 years of having a life of it? And so it's a concern. I can tell you right now, other states are using this against us in their own economic development efforts in terms of when they go out and call on their own businesses. And I'm sure they're up here in Michigan right now talking to our own companies about it.
They are seeing blood in the water, so to speak.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're circling around like sharks. I mean, they're doing their job. They're doing what they should do. But Rick DeVore, if people can't count on us, they're not going to wait to see how this turns out. We better get this thing fixed pretty quickly.
And I think what you're hearing from all 3 of us is I do not want to send the message that we haven't come a long way, because we have. But it's akin to doing the touchdown dance at halftime. And we have a lot of...
Or doing the touchdown dance before the football crosses and you let go of the football before you get into the end zone. We've seen that. I can't figure it out. But
So I think we've come a long way, but there's a lot of ground to take. And, my analogy would be banking. We lend money to consumers' power. I'm sure that John's CFO would say the thing I hate, if you want to irritate me as a bank, be inconsistent. Yep. We want to be consistent. Our trade is really being consistent through the cycle. That's our claim to fame. And CFOs love that. Same thing here. You have to be consistent. Some of these decisions on plants are years. They might span a generation of a governor,
sure.
right?
Yes.
The ones that John Ricolta builds, for sure, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're...
Yep.
Yes.
Well, I know, for example, we should be right now doing a little bit of a touchdown dance in the sense that we hit the national average for unemployment. We've got a lot of things to boast about right now. But what we're doing is now we're playing defense by trying to defend what we currently have in terms of our incentives and our budget resources to be able to do the very thing that we want to do, which is let's go now to be top 10. Let's not be satisfied with top 25. Let's move even further. We should be doubling down on economic development right now. Now's the time that we do have an opportunity to invest that much more.
Doug Rothwell, President and CEO, Business Leaders for Michigan. John Russell is here too, President and CEO, CMS Energy Corporation, and our co-host Rick DeVore of PNC. And we're talking about Michigan and a very important topic that we have to have some positive movement on right away because it's already doing damage by setting up a situation or a circumstance where people can't depend on us, can't rely on us. Whatever the outcome of this, we have to get to this quickly. Now, you've mentioned that Michigan is losing every foreign auto plant and corporate headquarters investment to states offering more incentives than Michigan. And while we've been successful in diversifying our economy, the automotive industry is still Michigan's leading industry, and our Detroit 3 automakers have been leading the state's economic recovery with job growth. Does the state have any programs to help that industry?
Well, they have a new auto office that was just established last year, which is a good first step. There's a new initiative that just was announced up here on the island yesterday called Mich Auto, which brings together the not only the industry but the economic development organizations that are responsible for retaining and attracting auto investments to the state. You would have thought we would have had that actually years ago. We haven't. This is the first time that has all come together.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the answer is, look, we've got a great deal to offer the auto industry. It's the place they should be, but that's not to say that we're the only place that they can be.
Right. And we have seen some success. I mean, let's talk a little bit of the upside here. We've seen Brembo, which is a big brake manufacturer from Italy that located south of Jackson. I think they're supplying Ford with some of their high-end brakes. C-Tech, which is a Chinese aluminum wheel manufacturer that ended up in Greenville, where the old Electrolux factory was. So we're seeing some of that being driven by the growth in the automotive industry. So that's positive.
Toyota's expansion in Ann Arbor is a good example. Yeah.
Exactly. So we're seeing some of that. But Doug's point is, that's not the time to stop. When the momentum's on your side, and you guys were using the football analogy, stick to what's working.
Right.
Don't change the plan now. And we're at that point now to be competitive. We are competitive in most cases, and now we want to continue to tell the world that. And it's no different than the Detroit story that you tell an awful lot. Things are changing.
Well, and I think the other issue that I want to pile on this issue, too, is if people are listening to this program and thinking, well, this is just for big business, that's a big part of it. But the programs I was outlining earlier, these are all small job creators. These are small businesses as well. So I think I don't want any misconception that these programs are just for large business. It spans all businesses.
And we don't want any misconceptions that we're not promoting the automotive industry's assets, because we are. We do it through the global trade shows, the events like the North American International Auto Show, the DADA, God bless them, the Society of Automotive Engineers World Congress, SAE, so important. And these are things that Michigan cannot afford to stop doing if we want to maintain our leading position with the auto industry. And we almost lost it. We almost lost it because we had a bad place. Cobo Hall was a big hall that needed to be fixed and transformed and has been into Cobo Center. And it took a lot of work by a lot of people, DADA included, because they had a lot to lose too, and we could have lost the North American International Auto Show to any number of people who wanted, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles. We didn't. It can be done. But my fear is, in this situation, with just the hint of butchering the MEDC, is a very frightening circumstance and situation.
Well, we're worried it's getting lost as well. You know, you have the roads issue, which is huge and important. You have the education funding issue, and you take all these and you throw them in the pot. And I'm just worried that the MEDC gets thrown in with some other cuts or something like that. That's a concern of mine, Doug. I don't know if you.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it feels right now like, for example, that because we did reach the national average with unemployment, we can take the kind of foot off the pedal a little bit and coast here, and that's just the worst thing we could do at this time.
I just want to say that John Russell, President and CEO of CMS Energy Corporation, told us that he could be with us for a period of time, and then he has to go, and this is the time he has to go. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you, too.
Keep up the good work.
You keep up the good work, too, both you guys. Let's take care of this issue. This is important for Michigan.
Very good.
Thank you.
John Russell, President and CEO of CMS Energy Corporation, and they are good neighbors, that's for sure, and doing all the things that they do around the entire state of Michigan. Now, we continue, of course, with Doug Rothwell, President and CEO of Business Leaders for Michigan, and Rick DeVore, PNC Bank. Let's talk a little bit of some of the other downsides of cutting incentives. There's certainly stagnation.
Well, again, we just got back on our feet. I mean, I keep repeating that, but I mean, for a decade we played defense in this state as we were slowly getting our way down to being 50th out of 50 states in just about every category. It took a lot of hard work these last 3 or 4 years to get us back in the ball game again. And now that people are starting to give us a second look from outside the state, and certainly businesses inside the state are very enthusiastic about the direction we're going in, we do risk stagnation. Our growth is not guaranteed for the future. There are other places that are doing a lot of good things as well. We don't work in isolation, and I think Michigan's mistake in the past is we always benchmark, Paul, our progress by what we did in the past. That's not how you have to do it in today's world. You've got to benchmark yourself against what your competitors are doing, and our competitors are not standing still.
Well, there's a price to disarming. I mean, think of it. We stop retaining and attracting business at our own peril. That seems pretty obvious.
Right. And I worry a little bit about, and obviously the most popular thing in the budget is the Pure Michigan campaign. We all love it. I love it. My son in Arizona sees the commercials. It's an outstanding campaign. I worry, though, that some of the lawmakers might say, well, let's take that off the table, put that into the budget, and then slash away at the remaining, which is just as important, I would argue. Maybe not as popular, maybe, and it's not as visual, right? Mm-hmm. But I mean, I think it's just as important. That's my worry about.
Well, and Rick, I think we're kind of at an inflection point as a state right now. I mean, we are at a point where you can either take your breath and sit back a little bit, or you can say, what do we need to do now? What's the next agenda to move us to top 10? This is an example of where sometimes you do have to make investments. The reason we're talking about this is because we're trying to figure out a way to fix the roads without investing new money. We're going to need a tax increase to fix the roads. I know it's horrible to say a tax increase, but the reality is we need $1.5 billion to do this, and you're not going to be able to find that just through budget cuts. We're not saying you can't find some, but not $1.5 billion. And so we're going to have to step up and solve that problem. There are others that loom on the horizon beyond that. College affordability. We've gone from a top 10 to a bottom 10 state. We risk our ability to have future talent if we don't get more kids able to have the education that they need. So the root cause of why we're here today is because we're trying to scramble in a pie that's only so big in terms of a pot of money, figuring out a way to kind of move the dollars around. We're at a point where we are able to now move forward, and we should, on road funding.
I know every drop in the bucket matters when you have to make cuts, but cutting in these MEDC funds is truly a drop in the bucket overall with what our monies are that we have. And I guess we can't just complain about it or say that we don't agree with the House's plan to fix the roads. We have to have suggestions. You mentioned one, Doug, and that is about some sort of a tax increase. Can you further elaborate what other ways, if you don't like what people are talking about, what other ways you want to fix this problem?
Well, Rick can speak to this as well. As an organization, we've been very consistent saying that we think that new revenues are needed to fund our roads, and we think that first of all, it needs to be a big enough fix that it actually solves the problem. We're worried when we hear solutions that come forward that say, well, let's maybe get to $1 billion. Well, the experts in transportation have said we need $1.2 billion to $1.5 billion minimum to solve the problem of just repairing our roads. So first, let's fix the problem big enough. It's got to be a sustainable source of revenues. The problem with budget cuts are you don't know if you can sustain those in future years. Different legislatures can come in and decide to change the priorities, which means you lose the ability to fund these long-term capital investments that roads are. And then the third thing is let's not, solve one problem by causing another.
Yeah, what comes to my mind from conversations with you in the past, let's not fix one thing while we break another one to fix it. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So there's different ways you can raise new revenue. I mean, one idea was you can go back to the ballot and raise the sales tax by a penny. The people would support that. Problem is you got to go back to the ballot. Another way is you can...
And you have to constitutionally go back to the ballot
so
that everybody understands that, because it is the sales tax. And I would say, Rick, you would agree, not to put words in your mouth, and you'll tell me if I'm wrong, that there are people out there that will pay a little extra if they know, A, it's really going to fix the roads, and B, it will keep the roads fixed. I think people will go for that. We can't make it another complicated jumbly book of stuff.
It was
where
too complicated.
People walk around. I read it on the air before people got in to vote, and I go, I'm sorry, folks, I'm not exactly sure what all this means. I know we need to fix the roads. That's all I know. but that didn't look like the way to
I would
do
agree.
it.
I think it was the old KISS principle, keep it simple.
That's come up a few times.
And another issue with that, I would agree with Doug that if you come in not at $1.5 billion, but come in, say you do $500 million, and then I think the public thinks, well, really that money didn't go to the roads because they're not going to see the kind of change that they need to see.
Right.
And so then there'll be this mistrust and what I think reputation risk for the governor and the state legislature. So I think we've put it off so long, and I listened to the governor talk about he can show how much per car we're spending on tires. I put 4 tires on my car in 2 years. 4, thank goodness for tire insurance from Suburban Cadillac. I'm like,
good for you.
I don't really need.
I don't have that.
I get
that David Fisher. I'm telling you, he's something.
I'll tell you, I was really suspect.
They
to get
had
it,
tire insurance, huh?
Oh yeah, it was
beautiful,
and it was great. I used it.
Good for you.
Unfortunately,
I'm sorry you had to use it, but at least you had it. When I got in one morning on my way to the radio station, I got a flat tire, and I thought, well, I got a spare. I'm going to pull over and get this done. And then I realized both tires on the left side of my car blew. Both of them. Well, I'm prepared, but not that prepared. I don't have 2 spares in my car, so I was stuck. That was it. The amount of money that we spend is ridiculous. The safety issue is a very real one, whether it's hitting one of these massive potholes and losing control or veering to not hit the pothole and hitting somebody else or something else. But here's the other thing that people want. Simple. The money really goes to fix the roads. It will sustain and keep the roads in good shape. And we want a warranty. We know about warranties.
Sure.
We care about warranties.
Absolutely.
We want people who build these roads to guarantee their work. There are, we are the customers, if you will. We're hiring them. We wouldn't hire people to do work around our house without some kind of a warranty for the work. What the heck are we doing in the state?
Well, you always I hear this all the time, and I just start laughing. Well, we have this freeze-thaw. Well, last time I checked, they have freeze-thaw.
Apparently
in
the
Ohio,
freeze-thaw ends at the Ohio
Illinois.
line.
And it's a lot of states find a way to
Nobody
get
likes to talk about the heavy trucks because we need heavy trucks for our heavy industry. I understand that. But these things have to be taken into account. And if it means, okay, you're not going to lower the weight you'll allow, then you're going to have to figure out when you build the roads how you make it so they can handle the heavier weight. You can't just ignore it and say, well, that's not a problem. The distribution through the axles, they have more axles and they're the weights. But I don't care. There's something wrong with the way we build our roads and the way they don't last. Period.
Well, and you see it coming up to Mackinac. I mean, I was startled by you start out, you're on a 3-lane road, you widen up to 4 lanes, then you go back to 2 lanes. It shows that the patchwork way that we have, funded our roads is evident in just how you drive.
Yeah.
Before we get out of here, I don't want us to just be talking about the roads. I want to talk about the business leaders of Michigan and the work that you've done, Doug Rothwell, and the help you've given Rick DeVore from PNC. You've released a strategy for growing hundreds of thousands of good-paying jobs. You started with the new Michigan, and I want to know what's happening, what that is, if people don't know, and what the status is.
Yeah, well, basically we have a kind of a 3-step plan, which is one, get the state more competitive from a business standpoint, and that's where we've made clearly the most progress as a state. We're back in the game again. We've also said that there are a couple of things that we need to invest new money in, one of which is roads that we've talked about. The other is talent, because we need to have more people with the education and training that we need going forward. So that's both job training and colleges and universities. And then the third thing is we do really need to leverage and build off the assets that we already have in this state that are great. We've talked a lot about Pure Michigan as an example. That was an example of where we said travel and tourism is a strength of Michigan's. We have these great natural assets. Let's put together a program that leverages that to even grow further into the future, and look at the success that we've had. You talked about the auto industry, Paul. That's another one of our new Michigan assets that we say, let's invest some more in. Let's put a program together to really make sure that that industry is thriving in the future. And the good news is we have about 5 or 6 of those kinds of industries in our state that we think can create those hundreds of thousands of jobs in the future.
Well, we've got the engineering talent. We've got a great geographic location to be Michigan to be the gateway to the Midwest, a higher education system, health and medical expertise, obviously the automotive industry, and the fabulous natural resources. We've got it all.
We do. And most states don't, and that's our advantage going forward, is why we think we can be top 10.
Rick, final word.
Well, You know, to me, I wanted to impress upon the WJR listeners that this is what this program is for. I came to Doug last Wednesday with a dilemma, and, you know, we're both very concerned about the MEDC budget, potential budget cuts, and the BLM team assembled a group, and they approached John, and John has been very, very good partner at BLM about really, he's kind of the tip of the spear on this issue.
Yep.
And we got together quickly and said, we have to talk about this. That's what this program is for, and I just hope that people take notice of this.
Well, I think they have to take notice of it. I think you've made that very clear. You've made the point. Doug Rothwell, President and CEO, Business Leaders for Michigan, thank you again for your time.
You're welcome.
It was great having John Russell here, President and CEO of CMS Energy Corporation as well, and our co-host, Rick DeVore of PNC Bank. Until our next PNC Roundtable, regards, Paul W. Smith.